All right, this is my review for the Aeneid. Somebody's gonna tell me it's wrong. Is it Aeneid? Is it Aeneid? I don't know how you say it. So we're just gonna go with Aeneid. It's probably wrong, but this was done by Virgil during the reign of Caesar Augustus. Okay, so I think this came out like 19, 14, 19, I don't know, somewhere in there, BC. Um, so it's pretty close or contemporaneous with the incarnation, the birth of Jesus Christ. Okay, because that happened if you read in the Gospels during the reign of Caesar Augustus. So this is Caesar propaganda. Just going to get that up front. Virgil was commissioned to write a great epic about Rome, and he ties it back to Homer. Okay, so this is like what you call secondary epic. All right, so you have the Homer, the Iliad, and the Odyssey. Okay, by Homer. Greek mythology, so this is Roman, right? So it's going to have all the Roman names. But if you've read these, okay, this was about the Battle of Troy. And then this was about Odysseus or Ulysses' journey home to Ithaca after the Battle of Troy. And so this work here is kind of like Homeric fan fiction. Okay, so Virgil here is going to take this guy named Aeneas, who appears in Homer. Okay, and he's a Trojan. So he's going to connect the foundation of Rome, the Roman Empire, back to the Trojan War. So we're getting the story from the loser's side. All right, so this book is 12 books. It's an epic poem, right? So it's divided into 12 books, whereas each one of these, okay, is 24 books. So there's 24 books in the Iliad. There are 24 books in the Odyssey for a grand total of 48 books. And Virgil is going to do in 12 books here what takes 48 books here. So the first 6 books of Virgil are about this guy Aeneas. Okay, he leaves the ruins of Troy and he goes on a voyage, which is very much like Odysseus's journey. He ends up in a place called Carthage eventually, but there's several things that on this journey that are reminiscent of the Odyssey. They go to the island of the Cyclops, for instance. Polyphemus, he's going to return here in the Aeneid. So little things like that, right? But anyways, he ends up in Carthage. All right, so they sail down from Troy, the ruins of Troy. It recounts the destruction, the Trojan horse incident. All of that's recounted here. And perhaps I go into a little backstory on this about what set up the Trojan War. Okay, so there was essentially a beauty contest where Paris, okay, so Paris was from Troy. His brother was Hector. Paris was asked to judge a beauty contest amongst the gods because Eros, the goddess of discord, threw a golden apple in the midst of this wedding celebration. I can't remember who was getting married. Was it Achilles' parents? Doesn't matter. This golden apple that said for the fairest. And so you had 3 goddesses that all wanted to claim the golden apple. You had Aphrodite, the goddess of love. You had Hera, the wife of Zeus. And then the third one was Athena, right? So anyways, Paris is told, choose amongst each one of the goddesses offers him something, okay, to choose them as the fairest. And he goes with Aphrodite because she promises him that he will be given the most beautiful woman in the world, and that is Helen of Troy. Well, actually, she was married to Menelaus. All right, so Helen is then taken from Menelaus and given to Paris, and then that's what causes the Trojan War. Is that Agamemnon, Menelaus' brother, they launch a fleet of 1,000 ships to go off to Troy, and they battle there for 10 years. That's what this is all about. So during that struggle, during that campaign, okay, various gods get involved in the fight, and the patron goddess of Odysseus here is Athena. Okay? Well, the patron goddess of Aeneas, who's a Trojan, is going to be Aphrodite. Aphrodite is his mother. Only she's not called Aphrodite because this is all Romanized. So it's Venus. Okay, so that's one of the things that's different about this, is because it's Roman, you're going to get the Roman names for the gods instead of the Greek names. So instead of Zeus, you'll get Jupiter or Jove. Instead of Hera, you're going to see Juno. And Juno is the primary antagonist here. All right, so Juno, Hera, is trying to stop the Trojans. The Trojans here it's a foundation myth. It's about the foundation of Rome. So what you'll see in the opening chapters, and this is poetry, is that Aeneas is basically told that his heirs, his offspring, eventually in the line, will be the founders of Rome, the greatest city in the world. And then it even mentions Caesar Augustus being from the line of Aeneas. And so this is basically propaganda for the Roman Empire. Okay, so they had broken away from being a republic, and now they are the Roman Empire. And so there's all these like prophecies in here about Rome, the greatness of Rome and everything else. So this is like a foundation myth. By the way, this isn't the last time that this is going to happen. I read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight last year, and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight traces the founding of England, the British Isles, back to Brutus. Okay, so it says that Brutus came from the Trojan War and then founded Britain. So these are kind of like foundational text for understanding like Western civilization. So if you have a familiarity of the Iliad and the Odyssey, then you want to move on to the secondary epic here, Virgil's the Aeneid. Really does help if you've read these first. So I'd recommend reading these first. Now, I'll talk a little bit about this translation, or about I'll talk about the way the book's laid out first. So the first 6 books of the Aeneid are really kind of reminiscent of the Odyssey. And then we have this central event that takes place. It's in book number 6, where Aeneas is going to go into the underworld to meet his father, right? Which is Odysseus travels into the underworld in the Odyssey. Only the geography of the underworld is really more mapped out here than it is in Homer. And I do think that, I'm just going to say up front, I think the first 6 books of the Aeneid are more interesting than the last 6 books. And I do think that chapter 6, at least in my opinion, was like the best book of the 12 books that are in here. And yeah, he goes into the underworld to talk to his father. And you get various like monsters and stuff that show up in the first half of this thing, the first 6 books. And there's, Aeneas's love affair with Dido, the queen of Carthage. And this is like kind of a tragic thing. I mean, Dido's kind of a tragic figure. We do sympathize with her. You can make comparisons between her and Penelope. It doesn't really map one to one, but it is interesting to see the difference between the women. But Virgil here is very much more like a Roman stoic. He's a very stoic character. I don't find him as interesting as either Achilles, you know, the Wrath of Achilles here. I don't think he's as interesting as Achilles. I don't think he's as interesting as the cunning, shrewd Odysseus here. He's very much a very virtuous character. His chief attribute is piety, his patriotism, his love for his family. He's carrying around the household gods with him. Okay. And when he leaves Troy, he has a son, right? So it's very much like Telemachus was the son in the Odyssey. Aeneas' son is kind of like you see this father-son motif in here as well. But yeah, so the first 6 books are like the Odyssey. The second 6 books are more like the Iliad. It's a big war. Okay, once they land on the shores of, I guess Italy, right? They go from Carthage to Italy, and then that's when the war starts. And the second half of this is much more like repetitive, and it's like a laundry list of this guy killed this guy, and then this guy killed this guy, and this guy killed this guy, so on and so forth. And although there is some really violent stuff in there about people getting their heads split, or I mean, it's pretty gruesome, right? Like a lot of the violence, but it just becomes so, I don't know, repetitive. All the interesting characters, at least in my opinion, are in the first half, in the first 6 books. So this is a case where I think that like the first half is a lot stronger than the end. And the primary antagonist in the second half of this is Turnus. And he's kind of like it does have kind of like a repeat. So like at the end of the Iliad, right, you have Hector versus Achilles. And here at the end of this, we're going to have Aeneas versus Turnus. Now, I don't think that I'm spoiling anything here. Okay, I haven't gone into all the nuts and bolts and all the ins and outs of the entire tale. So you definitely should read these. Okay, you should read these if you want to, have like delve into would be considered a Western education, right? Like, it's important to know this stuff. And these build on each other. So once you've read these, then you read this. And then further on, you'll get like Dante will write the Divine Comedy, which is going to refer back to these. In fact, Virgil is the figure that guides Dante through the underworld, right? So it's kind of going to come back to the geography that's laid out, mapped out in book 6 here. And then once you get through Dante, you'll read John Milton, Paradise Lost, which is again going to refer back to all this Greek and Roman stuff. So it's like an ongoing conversation, which starts with Homer, and then this builds on it, and then Dante's going to take it and do his thing, and so on and so forth. So I guess what I'm just saying is that these are things that you really should read. I know there's a million books in the world. Look, I didn't really have a great time reading this. It was kind of dry. That's because this is a verse translation by Alan Mandelbaum, and it's really a literal translation where they try to get as close to the original of Latin as translation as possible. But he's kind of dry. I think I would have preferred a more dynamic translation. It's always good to have multiple translations on hand. I do plan on still reading like the Lattimore translation of Homer at some point. I haven't gotten around to it. I'm just trying to read through this stuff to backfill my education, my lack of education. okay? And a lot of you that are watching this are, 15, 20 years younger than me. So you can get a head start on me. Don't wait until you're middle-aged to start reading this stuff, okay? Like, do it when you're young. Put in the work when you're younger, when you have the time. I regret not reading this stuff earlier in life. That's what I'm getting at. So it is work, not gonna lie, but my suggestion to you is, if it's boring you, just go through a book a day. There's 12 books here. So if you read one book out of this a day, it's doable. I mean, these aren't incredibly long. You're looking at reading about, I don't know, 25 pages or so, 27 pages for book one. So, I mean, read one book a day and you'll finish this in 12 days, right? I do think that these were more interesting to me, the Iliad and the Odyssey, but this is pretty good. I don't think it's as good. I mean, if this is like, I'm going to get killed for this comparison, okay? If this is Star Wars and this is The Empire Strikes Back, this is Return of the Jedi. Or if this is, I don't know, Batman Begins and this is The Dark Knight Rises, then this, or The Dark Knight, then this is The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, still enjoyable. It's just, it's not as good. I know that's terrible. I mean, I don't think this is like Terminator 3, If this is Terminator and this is Terminator 2, this is better than Terminator 3. That's what I'm getting at. Okay, you can all come at me, bro, and tell me how dumb I am for making those comparisons. But read these, all three of them, all right? Don't be a dummy. Read these. Make this a goal if you've never read the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Aeneid. Put these on your TBR for this year and read them, because these are books that you should read before you die. All right. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a wonderful day.